Hello everybody, my name is Stofe, but you can call me the Third Polygon. Welcome to a little tutorial series where I'm going to show you how to make vegetation for video games. So, to get started, I want you guys to open up Blender. Blender is most commonly one of the most used 3D software out there. It's an open source, free to use, and it has plenty of tutorials online. But I was thinking that I would make a quick little tutorial series how to make different types of 3D models. And to get started, we're going to be making vegetation. So, welcome to Blender. Blender, to navigate, you rotate your screen with holding down the middle mouse button. Well, this little button right here in the middle. So, do that by rotating. So, we're going to start off this project with deleting everything in the scene. So, the first thing is, before we start spawning out different types of, planes to represent the grass, because that's what we're going to do in the final, that's the final way we're going to be using the grass. But to make different types of vegetation for games, we have to sculpt them or illustrate them. You can either do it in Photoshop or any illustration programs like Clip Studio Paint and so forth, where you can illustrate different types of leaves and stuff like that. But if you want to have normal maps to different types of leaves or grass or anything like that, then you're gonna have to sculpt them, or just really high poly surface modeling them. There's different ways to do this. So I was thinking we're gonna make some grass, really simple grass, and we're gonna basically just use a cube. We're gonna scale down this cube, and don't forget to click this little magnet snapping up here, and also don't forget to set it to increment. That means it will snap to the grid, and it will make our workflow just a bit easier. So you can either click up here to choose different directions you can look from, or you can click the numpad, and the different buttons on the numpad will show. So to make a petal of grass, we're going to pull out this side menu. We're going to hide this just because it's a lot easier to see. We're going to do like this and go into edit mode. In edit mode, hit tab. And then from this, we're going to choose face select up here, or shift click for multiple modes. Anyway, after you do that, hit E to extrude and pull up. So we're going to pull it up a few blocks, a few chunks. And then we're going to grab this tool right here, the loop cut tool. We're going to click, and then we're going to go down to this little bar where my face cam is hidden. It says loop, cut, and slide. Click that. And here, I want you to set this to 2. And if it's too confusing that you guys can't see it, it's down in the bottom corner. But if you can't do that, you can just click with the mouse button on this, and it will make the cuts anyway. As you can see, I can add a cut here if I would like. Control C is to undo. And with these cuts, we're going to up here, right here, toggle X-ray. So click this button, toggle the X-ray. And now what we can do is change the scales of these objects. So by using the transform tool, we can grab the green and sort of drag it out. We can select this, drag it out, select this, drag it out. And think of this as we're making a 2D leaf, right? Or a 2D grass petal. So currently, the petal should be a straight shape. And then later on, when we bake it and make this super nice detailed Animal Crossing style, that's when we're gonna start making the bends and the creases and stuff. But for now, we're gonna keep it flat, keep it simple, and yeah. So after we have this basic shape, we can hit A and select the entire mesh. We can drag it together a little bit to make it a little thinner. And I was thinking that we grab the outer edges, so hold in Shift and click the outer edges by also having this selected, the edge select. Click the outer edges, click, click, click. Do, like this. And then drag them inwards a little bit. Just a tad. Because what we're doing now is the early stages of a sculpt, where you block out the shapes. And yes, we're going to be doing this with digital sculpting. Digital sculpting is a really convenient way to get high details on your 3D models. Of course, I presume that you have some basic knowledge of 3D modeling before this tutorial, and now you're finally ready to go into more vegetation and so forth. So yeah, by doing these little shapes here, you can see that we're starting to get more of a petal shape, but it's not quite there yet. Of course, we want to make this little bend down here a more flatter. So we're going to extrude it out. We're going to pull it in, and then we're going to do another extrude. Pull it in a little, and then there we go, extrude. And yes, I know it's all bent, and we're going to fix that. So up here, you can snap it to the side, and we're just going to... Whoopsie, I forgot I did not have X-ray on this side. You can turn on X-ray both of these sides, and if you hold down middle mouse button, you can sort of move this entire section, or you can use the scroll wheel. Either way is fine, both work. If you hold in R to rotate and then hold in Control, you can see that it will snap rotate, and then you can hold in Control to either have a smooth transition, or you can have a snap transition by letting go of Control. So we're going to sort of set it like this. I'm going to hold in Control a little bit. I want to just make it slightly straighter. And that looks decent enough. So this is our basis for a simple leaf. So from this, I'm going to start doing the sculpting. Also, I'm going to add another edge loop here, because I feel like we should even out the shapes slightly beforehand. I think that looks good. So we're going to go out of edit mode, and it's time to use modifiers. So modifiers can be scary if you're new to them. You can find them in the Modifier Properties tab. And don't forget to click your model before doing this. Also, we're going to name our model. So we're going to name this Leaf. Or Petal. Petal. That's good for me. So we're going to hit this little, it looks like a wrench, right? We're going to click the Modifier tab. And then we're going to go down. And then we're also going to choose... Either we could use the subdivision surface. And it will see here, it will add a more smooth surface mesh, but it also distorts the mesh a lot. And for this project, we're not going to need the subdivision modifier. Not now. We're going to start off with using the remesh modifier. So click that. And you see here, it's going to set a voxel size. And it's going to be all jaggedy and weird, but that's okay. That's what we want. So yes, be really careful when you pull on this slider, right? Because you can crash your computer really quickly because you're adding a really high amount of polygons by doing this. So drag up the voxel size a bit, just a little bit, just so we have the general shape, I think, around there. So as we see here, now we still have a jagged shape, but we have a lot to work with. So up here, we're gonna hit apply. And then we're going to also, don't forget to do this, drag your leaf up to the little crosshair thingy-bobble, and then hit Control A, and then click All Transforms. Control A, All Transforms. What this does, it moves the transform position, this move tool, and it sets it down here where you moved it. So if you move your model like exactly where the crosshair is, and then hit that button, you see it will move the crosshair. Or it will not the crosshair, sorry. It'll move the move tool. That's called its like snapping position, its origo position, its transform point. Anyway, it's pivot point, if to be specific. Anyway, the next step after this is I'm gonna actually do another remesh, because I want to get rid of the jaggedness, but you don't have to do this. This is just for me to get a more smoother topology to work with. So I'm going to do that, but be real careful when you're doing the voxel size, because it will crash your computer. And don't forget, before we do the sculpting, do the Control A and then All Transforms. Okay, next step after this is to start going over to the Sculpting tab right up here. So hit Sculpting. In this sculpting menu, we have all the power in the world to make our leaf really, really nice and detailed. So I'm going to start off by pulling out this little tab here, because you can see here, if you pull it out, you can read what all the tools do. I'm going to start by pulling this one out so we have the double amount. I like having the visibility. And I'm also up here going to set Enable Mesh Symmetry on the X-axis. And no, that was wrong. We modeled it in the wrong axis, then we're going to choose Y. And Y was correct. You can know that it's correct by looking at the blue dot that's mirroring. So we have a multitude of tools to work with, right? We have the draw tool, the sharp tool, the clay tool, clay strips, clay thumb, layer, crease maybe? Well, we got scrape tool, which is the one I'm going to start off with. I'm going to start off with the scrape tool. So you can actually connect to your drawing tablet if you got one, or you can use a mouse. Just make sure that you have the strength enabled on the pressure, and well, the radius is up to you. I usually keep the radius off because I want to lock my radius. And well, after that, it's just to get sculpting, right? So I'm going to start off by using the scrape tool. I'm going to sculpt and bevel these edges. And see, with the mirror on, it will start doing the same thing on the other side. So we're going to do that. So I'm going to follow along and scrape this. Zoom in by holding Control and then moving in. And we might as well get this side as a little bit as well. Remember, when we're going to due to us doing the baking process, we're going to be using Substance Painter for this. And if you want to have another side view up here, you can drag it out. And then you can hide the tool selection here. And you can have like another view where you see the leaf from this angle and one from this angle, just to make it a little easier. So use the scrape tool to like to get the shape that you want out of it, you know. And remember, always use references when you're trying to make a leaf or any type of object, right? Because that's going to make it a lot easier. Then we can use the sharp tool, and we can actually add a crease in the middle of our mesh. And of course, we're going to fix it up because this is rough, right? We're just rough sculpting now, right? So right that maybe. And then we add the little lines like these, you know. Nice and stylized. And of course, this is really rough. We want to make the lines all nice. And then we're going to add a line right there. Add a little bit. And then if you want to have asymmetry, you can just turn off this, and you can add like little symmetrical lines if you would like. I'm going to stick to symmetry. I like symmetry. It is unnatural, but it is natural at the same time to see. Anyway, to smooth out your surface, you can hold in the shift button. And you can sort of smooth out the leaf. Because, we don't want it to be all lumpy and weird. So I like this. This is starting to look decent. Yeah, something like that. So I'm actually going to use this tool called the crease tool. And I'm going to sort of drag these shapes along. From the middle as well. And what the shift button does, it kind of relaxes the topology. Seeing how this is starting to look more like a leaf. Or leaf loaf, probably. Anyway, weird analogy. Aside, you can start seeing the shape that you want, right? And if you don't think something looks good, you can just hold in the shift button and redo the creasing. or relaxing the surface of the mesh, you know, until you get a result that you like. So, I want this top part to be more pointy and less weird and round. So I'm gonna use this tool called the elastic deform, and I'm sort of just gonna deform the mesh until I see a result that I like. So I kind of like that. That kind of looks good. It looks like a leaf. I'm just gonna grab this tool here, and I'm also gonna, crease this little edge right here. And I'm gonna grab this tool. I'm gonna crease it, and then I'm just gonna use this tool right here and pull it all together. So different tools do different things, and it's just good to test things out. Because you might find a tool that you like, but you can also add custom brushes. So there's a lot you can choose from. This is not a general tutorial on how to do sculpting. This is more how to do how the work process of making vegetation is. Anyway, after you made the leaf, we're gonna move on to the next step. So my tip is to save performance, make a few of these. But before we move on to the next leaf, right? I recommend that you go back out into layout, turn off X-ray, right-click to mesh, and then shade smooth. Because if you bake with the flat surface, you're gonna get all these low polygon. You're gonna get all these polygons on your bake, which you don't want. So just shade smooth after you've done sculpt, not before, because when you're doing the actual sculpting, it's convenient to see the detail and how you're deforming the mesh. So my tip now is make a few different leaves in the same angle, and make about 4 or 5. It's all up to you. But that's what I'm going to do now, and then I'll meet you back. Okay, so after making about 4 leaves, it's time to bake the leaves, because they're way too high poly to be able to be used in a game, right? So these are just your sculpts. They're not the ones you're supposed to be using. Also, I've been naming these accordingly. So A, B, C, D, underscore high poly for HP, right? And the only one I messed up with this C one right there because I missed it. So petal underscore A underscore HP, B, C, and D, so forth, right? But now, how do we make these into a sort of like a leaf texture that we can use to make, high poly or low poly, but has the high poly detail leaves for games? Well, This works, by the way, for grass or any type of vegetation that you're doing. And how the process to do this is quite simple. And all you need to do is grab a plane, RX90 on it. And also, don't forget to rotate all of your leaves in the correct RX90. All right, there we go. Anyway, grab all your high poly leaves and move them so we have them placed. Also, don't forget to scale them down like this. Also, we could actually, no, don't scale them down. Scale this by 10, so S10. There we go, and then set a flat face like this. So now, what we can do is we can place these leaves around like this. Right? And what we need to do is, I'm also going to move this aside so you can follow along a lot easier. There we are. Okay. So what we need to do to make this actually like a sustainable leaf setup, right, is I'm going to actually scale up some of these leaves because I want them to be quite large. So I'm going to scale this one up. I'm going to scale this one up. I'm going to scale this one up. I'm going to scale this one up, right? And what you need to do is sort of fill out this, but the leaves are not supposed to touch any of the corners. So they're supposed to be like pretty close, but not touching the corners. And at this state, you can actually like build really, really basic plant shapes because, well, we have the leaves for it. And that could actually be quite handy. So let's see, I grab this leaf and I did like a little rotate on it. And then I did a little like a second rotate on it like this. And then I did another third one like that. And then I scaled it out a bit. And now I can actually like make a little plant, sort of, right? So yeah, you can actually bake any of these shapes now, like sort of like baking cookies, or we're going to make a cookie cutter sorts, right? So you can actually do that, but that's not what we're going to be doing here. So just make sure that the leaves don't take up all the space, and you know, make sure they're not super tiny. Like that. That looks good. And of course, we do have some extra space to fill out with like extra like leaves and stuff like that. We could fill this paper up a lot. You just have to make sure that they don't touch or overlap at all. So what do we do next? How do we turn this into like a leaf texture that is like beautiful and usable and so forth, you say? Well, we have our plane, which is our LP, and then we have our HP objects. And what we're going to do now is we're going to bake the HP upon the LP. So first of all, don't forget to save your project like multiple times. I should have said that in the beginning. But also we're going to save it all into this folder. We're going to, and right here, we're going to save everything. So we're going to first export our LP object. So we're going to go up here, export, FBX. And here in the folder that we chose, we're going to choose selected objects. And then here, we're going to do LP underscore bake. Because this is our like low poly baking plane. And then we're going to select the leaves. Like this, all our 4 leaves. We could have more or less. We're going to go to export, FBX. And this would be our high poly bake. So HP bake. And don't forget to have selected objects. And then hit export. And of course, give your computer a little while. It could chug along, but we should see our HP files and our LP files right here. So the next step is to open a program like Substance Painter, or like any other program that works when it comes to baking. You can actually bake in Blender, but unfortunately, I will not do that. So let me open up some. So we're gonna first of all, there are a lot of tutorials and online documentation on how to use this program. But it is quite easy. So hit close, and then we're going to go up here, and we're going to hit file, and we're going to hit new. So in our document resolution, I'm going to keep it at 2048 because it's nice to have a higher resolution when doing the baking and looking at your model and so forth. Also, we're going to be using OpenGL. We could use DirectX, but that depends on like what type of engine this is going to be running on. So we're going to use OpenGL, and then we're going to select our files. So we're going to go into the vegetation folder, vegetation tutorial, and I'm going to grab it all, Control V, and we're going to select our low poly. So select our low poly object, and everything seems to be correct. Just make sure you have the same settings and hit OK. So give it a little moment, and it's going to pop up. We have our plane. This is the 3D view. If you hold Alt, you can rotate your view. And this is our 2D view. This is not a rotatable view. So we have a lot of pre-made materials here, and we also have like these materials that are really nice to look at. But we're gonna make it our own for this, and we're gonna do the bacon and all that. So to bake our leaves onto this plane, so we can actually use them as a texture, you have to go up to Mode and then Bake Mesh Maps, or you hit the F8 button. Right here, with the output size, I'm gonna choose a 2048 because it's a nice high definition, resolution for this, and then we're gonna select our high poly mesh. So right here, high definition meshes, we're gonna select our HP, right there. Oh, it's starting to show up. Look at that. That's nice. I think we accidentally put it on the wrong facing direction. Whoopsie. Anyway, in Blender, it seems that I did a wrong facing direction. In Blender, before we do all these steps, make sure that you have face orientation in the right way. So up here, set face orientation, and then grab this plane, hit R, X, no, Y, and then 180. Flip it around and re-export our LP object. So we're going to export, and I'm just going to overwrite this LP object, so we're going to hit export again, and give it a moment. And see here, and then we go up to, here we go, edit, and then re-import mesh. Boom. Now it's not, now we're in the right facing direction. Apologies for that. So what we need to do now is see this max frontal distance, right? We need to grab it until they turn blue, and you can just set it pretty around here. Just make sure that it's above this area, and when they're blue, they're pretty much ready to go. You can raise the rear distance if you want as well. And the other setting that we need to set is the anti-aliasing. I want to set this to 16. And also down here, I want to have the opacity baked, because I want the leaves to be cut out objects. And I want the bent normals, and I want the height. So I'm just going to bake all of them, just check them all in. And then when you're ready, click Bake Selected Textures. And you will see here, your leaves will pop up. They'll create the normal maps. It will create the space normals, the ID, the ambient occlusion, the curvature, position, thickness, and then height map, and then bent normals, and opacity. And after it's done, we have our cut out leaves, see? So, to check if everything's good and dandy, you can actually go up here, and you can choose opacity. So, this will be our alpha channel. So, that's all nice to have. We can have our bent normals, position, ambient occlusion, and so forth. So, technically, you can export all of this if you would like. But, of course, we want to have some, actual material and data on our leaves, right? Also, there is a ray traced mode up here where, but, yeah. Anyway, so how do we make this nice and well detailed, you probably ask? Well, yeah. You could just drag and drop a nice texture like this, but that doesn't look like a leaf. It looks like a bone. Or you can add some bronze to it, of course, but that's not what we're going to be doing here. So what we're going to do is make a folder. And in this folder, we're going to name this leaf. And then right here, we're going to add a fill layer inside of this folder. This fill layer will be called our base. For our, I want the B to be big. Excuse me, right there. Good. So this will be our base color. Right here in the base color, we can actually choose a nice green hue. And from here, you can pretty much just adjust the color you want. And be ready to change the roughness a lot, because if you drag in the roughness and it's really On the darker areas, it will be all nice and shiny. And if you pull it to 1, it will be all flat. So a leaf, depending on how like wet the object is, that's what determines how rough it is. Most often when it comes to vegetation. So I want to have a little bit of roughness, but not too shiny. So I'm going to put it around 144. And if you're making an object that is made out of metal, you can use metallic. Metallic will make it actually look like real metal. So you can try that out. And for the height map, it won't do anything right now because everything is sharing the same values. The next step to make this leaf like even cooler, right, is I'm actually going to use a darker color for this. I think I want to have a darker leaf. Something about there. If you're holding shift button and the right click button, you can actually rotate the sun, and that's going to make it a lot easier for you to like know how the leaf is going to pop out. And as you can see, it's like looks like it's going to be popping out. But it doesn't really look like a leaf yet. That looks way too plasticky, and that looks way too matte. So about there. And so it looks really dry, but that's fine. Anyway, how do we go from here? Well, we're going to add another fill layer, and we're going to make another green. Actually, we can use the pipette tool and choose the same green. And from here, we can actually make it either lighter or darker. And I'm going to use a lighter color, I think. We're going to try that. And then this fill layer, we're going to use this and call this curve. And this is going to be using a generator, a really standard generator. And we're going to use the curvature generator. Except we did it on the wrong one. So to use the curve, you need to add a black mask. And from the black mask, you have to use add a generator and then curve. That means the colors from this will apply with the curve shape. So you can probably tell now that it's adding a sort of like a detail around the leaves. But because the leaves, the color's too similar, you can barely see it. See? So we actually might want to do we're going to do a lighter color first. Because where things bend, that's where they add the crease. And the crease most often is a lighter color. Like that. Contrast can be higher. You can also invert it, but yeah. See, that looks pretty good. And we can rotate it and rotate the sun, and you'll see it will add these little like creases around certain areas. It'll just make it that little extra. So the next thing we're gonna add, instead of a curve, is now a sort of like a grime, a little slightly like spit kind of way, you know, where it like looks like it's a little bit more wet. So we're gonna use the same base. And this time, we're going to use a really light color. And we're going to make this pretty rough. Or really little bit of roughness. And then, we're going to right-click, add a black mask, add a generator. And we can actually use a dripping modifier or generator that we want. And yes, this is most often used for rust. But it can be really useful to make like little bits of damage to the leaf or similar effects. Like it's good for rain a lot, I've noticed. And you can drag up the contrast. If you just want, I just want to have a few dots, like just to add that little extra. Not really visible, but just it adds a little extra to the leaf. Yeah, I like that. It just adds these little droplets, right? Nice little touch. About there. That looks good. See, and it will make it really, really reflective there. You can actually use the metal here if you would like, but that's not necessary. But yeah, that looks pretty decent. See how this little point will shine here now? Just adds that little extra detail. Also, if you want it to pop out, you can actually use you can like make bird poop if you want. You can actually use the height map to do different like damages to different objects, but it's mostly used for like more metal-y objects, so we're gonna set that to 0. Okay, so the next thing we're gonna set up is more like a grime, a dirt layer, and that's gonna be above everything else, and this fill layer is gonna call dirt. And I'm going to name this drip. So in the dirt layer, we're going to start off with white because it's a lot easier to see. I'm going to add another black mask, add a generator, and we're going to add a dirt. And yeah, it's going to look weird, but you can probably tell what I'm trying to do here. See how it's starting filling in these cracks here? So that's kind of what we want, right? We want to fill in the cracks. So the grunge scale, we can actually change that. Doesn't need to be too high. And this should pretty be low. Yep, good. And then the contrast should be like this. I like that. And the dirt level should be a little higher, like that. So yeah, it will fill in like little bits of dirt into the crevices. And then from here, we can use a darker color. And we're going to actually steal the same green color from here. And then we're going to make that like really dark. And then, of course, I'm going to set this to a really flat color. And it's going to make the leaves pop a lot. So, yeah, these petals are starting to look pretty good. They pop out a lot, and they have the curvature, and they bend and all of that, and look pretty nice. We can actually click on the curve here. We can actually pop that out a bit like this. See? There are different like things you can try. We're not gonna do that, but it's cool to test things out. So play around with Substance Painter if you haven't done that. And we're gonna add another fill layer. And from here we're gonna add another black mask, another generator, and from here we're gonna use a ambient occlusion. So add this. And from here, we're going to pull here until we see the curves, the crevices. We're going to use the blur, pull the blur up a bit. Like that. And the contrast. And then flip it. So now, same color again. Steal the colors. And from here, we can actually play around by doing different levels of detail. See? I think that looks pretty good. And there we are. And of course we can put it under the drip and under here and pretty much under everything except the base. And it'll add a little extra. And we're gonna name this Ambient Shine. I cannot spell. Ambient Shine. And yeah, you can actually like play around with the sliders again. And I think that is pretty much where I want these leaves to look like. Of course, you can change the colors and do all the adjustments yourself and find a style that fits you best. But now we're going to turn this into our final leaf textures that we can use for a video game where we'll actually implement this into Unity. And we're going to start off with exporting this. And in Unity, first of all, have Unity open. And first of all, start a project. And you need to, in the project settings here, this is either for Unity or Unreal or any types of game where you want to set it up, but make sure that you know what render pipeline you're working with, okay? So for Unity, we're going to be working with a Unity 3D URP. That's the Universal Render Pipeline, and it's really convenient. So I'm going to name this Project YouTube Vegetation. Vegetation. There we go. And choose a folder, of course, you know. And we're going to choose the same folder that we always choose. Right here. Actually, going to set up a new folder. Unity example. So we're going to choose that folder right here. And we're going to select it. And we're going to create project with the URP 3D. So while this starts up, we're going to externally export our textures. And right here, don't forget to save your projects, of course. I have been a real klutz in this tutorial, with not saving. I apologize for that. But don't forget to save quite often, like every 5 minutes. And save. And now, how do we get our textures into, like, how do we actually make this into, like, plants that we can use? Well, first of all, we're going to export textures right here. And it's going to pop up with this little window. The window, I almost said. And right here, in the folder where we have all our stuff, right? Now we have a lot of things going on. Right here, we're going to make another folder and name this Vegetation _ URP. So we're going to make 2 exports for these textures, right? One for Blender and one for URP. Like that. So we're going to first do the URP one, the one that's going to be used in a game. Select folder, go to Document Channels plus Normals right here, and scroll down until you see the one called Unity Universal Render Pipeline Specular. And the only reason why it's specular is because we haven't used anything that is made out of metal, okay? So choose specular and then hit okay. And then based on the texture size, yeah, we can have it either on 2048 or we could set it to a custom resolution, which we would most likely do of like 512, 1024, but most likely vegetation would be around 256 or 512. It all depends on the scale and the size of things. So we're going to set it to 256, and then we're going to hit export right here. So hit export, and when that's done, we'll have these nice 3 textures nicely set up right here. And that means we're actually we're getting pretty close to done with this tutorial, but not fully. So another thing that we need to know about is that the alpha channel needs to be included in the albedo, right? And you can see here that this is not, it's clearly not included in this image, right? It's named albedo transparency, but it's not carrying any of the transparency. So before, we're also going to set up this for Blender. We're going to actually have the 2048 texture for Blender. And we're going to set this up. We're going to go all the way up and choose Blender. There we are. And then we're also going to make a folder for it as well. Vegetation _ actually, yeah, we can do a dash Blender and choose the Blender folder and do the export right here. And hit export. Nice. And if we're lucky, we should get one that's called like an alpha. We're going to do large icons right here. Yeah, we didn't get an alpha, as you guys can tell. So, where do we move on from here? Do we have to set up an alpha? Yes, we do. So, we're going to set up an alpha. I'm going to use Photoshop for this. You can use any program that has support for alphas. I suppose that GIMP has support for alphas. But in this tutorial, we're going to be using Photoshop. Anyway, before we do the Photoshop stuff, we're going to set up a new Blender project. Okay, so don't forget to save your old one. So we're going to go to New, General. We're going to delete everything. And we're going to spawn in a plane. This plane is where we're going to have our textures applied. So going to Shading, up here, hit New. And then from here, we're going to name this Vegetatio, I cannot spell. I'm going to name this Vego. Anyway, from here, you have your base colors and all that, but from the principal PSD, we can hold Control-Shift-T if you have the Node Wrangler installed. Well, from here, we can choose Blender, and then we can also choose our texture and hit Apply. And we should see our vegetation plants pop up. And of course, I do not possess any alpha, but I'm going to use cycles here just real quick, and I want to see if it pops out. No. That does mean that we don't have an alpha channel. Open Photoshop. Open the albedo texture. Click Channels. Click Make New. Choose, and it will create the automatic alpha texture. Replace the alpha texture from a texture from Substance Painter, or you draw it by hand by making a black and white texture. And then you're done. Export it as a TGA file. Boom! Now it's a transparent version of your leaf. Quick and easy fix. And then back into Blender. Don't forget to swap the file. And it did nothing. That's a lot better though. Anyway, after that, of course, it should just show up as a transparent image now. But it will only do that when you're in the cycles view for some reason for my Blender version. But see, now you got your leaves technically. And they're nice and they popped out and they're, you know, individual objects. So what do we do now? How do we make this into like a little plant that you can, you know, manipulate? Well, one trick is to open up. So we're going to make 4 versions of this plane. We're going to name this Plant A. And I'm just going to do a demonstration with one plant that we're making. But yeah, so you can actually make duplicates of these, right? And this is going to be like Plant A, Plant B, and so forth, right? But here in Plant A, what you can do now is like cut out like these parts. And a neat trick you can do is just grabbing a knife tool. And boop, 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 boop. Boop like that, and then you can actually like delete the rest like this. Boop. And now we have actually cut out the little leaf, and now we can actually just remove that as well, like that. That's one way of doing it. The other way is like just accepting how it is and then rescaling the plane until you only have your mesh visible. But that's a quick and easy fix. And you can see how good it looks when you have it all fixed. So after this, right, it's not perfect. This is an n-gon still because it has no polygons. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna do triangulate the faces, and then we're just gonna do tristic quads, and then boom. See how that fixed pretty much our our issue with the n-gon. Of course, it's not perfect, and there's like hundreds and billions of ways to do this a better way, but this is one way. So, of course, now what we need to do is we're going to move this all the way over to our center point again. Remember what we did then? And then we're going to hit Control A, and then all transforms. And then we can actually rotate our plant upwards and start deforming our plant by just, you know, grabbing it a bit, you know. And yes, this would work hundreds of times better if the topology was a bit better. But it's not really the point of this little experiment right here. But you can probably tell what the end result will be. A little leaf petal. And don't forget to smooth shade it as well. And now you can probably tell, whoa, it looks like a leaf. Huzzah. Well, now what you can do is you can duplicate it and sort of like mirror, like do a little flipperoo. And just make sure like they're connected like this. Like that. And then you can actually like reset its 0 point again. And you can see now we made a little double plant thing. A really nice little double plant. Easy peasy, right? So now what you can do is you can control J and join them, and then control A and set their pivot point like this. And then you have made a little plant. What you can also do next is, well, you can make another like a little plant like this. You could scale this up a little bit just to make it slightly different. You're gonna scale this down or scale it up. But most often you just want to keep it nice and simple like that. So now we made this little plant like that. See? A little cute little plant that's growing. And if we add a little light source, we can add a point light and set this like slightly above just to see how it looks. See? Our nice like stylized little plant that looks almost real. That's how you make vegetation in games. Quite easy, isn't it? Quite easy. So we're gonna merge all these, connect them like that, and then Shift A, and we're gonna name this, this is plant A, and we're gonna export this little plant. So I'm just gonna export it right here. So we hit export, FBX again, vegetation tutorial, selective objects, and I'm gonna make a new folder, and I'm gonna name this plant models, plant models, right here. In here, we're gonna save our different plants, and we're gonna name this plant A. Plant A, right there. And from here, hit export FBX. And after you've done that, because, you know, like the amount of polygons on this object is like pretty low. That's the fun part. Like there's barely any polygons. And the face orientation is correct. And then the statistics, it's about 84 triangles. That's nothing. It's literally nothing when it comes to like the world of 3D. So now in Unity, you have your wonderful empty scene, which is completely boring, right? And now you probably want to start using your plants, right? So we're going to just set this up in the sample scene. It doesn't need to be anything special, but we can save in our sample scene. And we're going to set up a folder. We're going to name this models, like that. And in the models folder, I can just raise it up a bit, like that. We're going to set this, one is going to be called textures. And in here, we're going to actually drag all of our textures from the URP selection. So we're going to use this one, the TGA version, this and this. These three. Not the original PNG one, only these. Because now that one has an alpha channel, and we want that alpha channel. So, see here, when it's called alpha is transparency, click it in. Like that, and you can see now it made this little checkerboard texture down here. Lovely little checkerboard. And what you need to do now is create a material for it. So click material. So right click here in the project window. Go to create. And then go down to material. Here, name this vegetation underscore pedals. Pedals. Like that. And from here, see here where the workflow mode on this little ball. Click specular. Because now we made it like we have a specular material. Also, don't forget to just click this little lock right up here, just so we don't swap window. And drag the albedo alpha into the base map. Drag the specular into the specular map. And drag the normal into the normal map. And then click Fix Now. So, you're probably wondering, hey, why is the texture not transparent here? Well, that's because alpha clicking is not applied. So click alpha clipping. And there we are. So there's yes, you can technically go up here and click transparent, but that's going to cause issues with like further models. And you want the lighting to be perfect on your vegetation, right? So just click alpha clipping and you'll get better results. So now this is your petal texture. Nice and clean. So drag this over into the models right there. So you have it right here. And now, all you need to do is grab your 3D model out of Plant Models, Plant A. Right here, we got our little vegetation plant. You don't need to have this checked in anymore, up here. And our beautiful little plants right here is missing a Vego material. So drag your vegetation material right here and hit apply. Whoa, we got our really nice vegetation plant, but something's wrong over here. You can probably guess what's happening here. You can't see the model when you turn it, but you can see it from above. Well, go into your plant vegetation texture again, and where it says render face up here, click both. Now you should be able to see through your material, and if you go back into here, you should be able to see it from all angles. So what you can actually do now is you can drag it into your scene by dragging it over here. There we are. And if you hit F, you can focus on the object, and you got your wonderful little plant. You can probably see over here. Good work, everyone. Now you have made your final little plant model. You should be proud. Beautiful little plant life. It's better than real life. Haha, nah, that's a bad joke. Anyway, you can probably tell it looks all nice. I'm going to drag this window over here so we can see. And you can probably go, whoop, 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 little plant. And see how it all reacts to the light source as well? All nice. It looks all 3D, even though it's like it's in like one dimension. It's really pretty. And of course, you can actually like duplicate it around, create multiple versions of it, and just make a little plant garden. See? Nice little plant garden. So good work, everyone. I hope you enjoyed this little tutorial. You know, it's been a good tutorial. It's been fun. It's actually dark out now where I am, and it's been a great time. So I hope you all enjoyed, and yeah. If you're interested in more tutorials, check my channel out. There's going to be a lot more to come, and I hope to be able to get more tutorials made in the future. So yeah, stay tuned for more. See you guys, and bye-bye.